Good afternoon, everyone, and happy Earth Day, and welcome to the Grasscast, a forecast of grassland growth webinar hosted by the National Grazing Lands Coalition in partnership with USDA Natural Resources Conservation Service and the USDA Agricultural Research Service. My name is Michael Margo, and I will serve as your moderator today. Before we begin, just may want to just double check that you are muted just to avoid any distraction. And for a brief outline of today's webinar, we'll begin with two distinguished guests providing opening remarks, followed by our Grasscast presenters. And then after our presentations, I'll open it up for questions. Question and answer session. So our first guest is Chad Ellis, Chair of the NatGLC Board and Chief Executive Officer of Texas Agricultural Land Trust.
Thank you, Michael. And I'm wondering who else is on here. I know we have one distinguished, definitely speaker with Karen to speak right after me, but thank you. As chairman of the National Grazing Land Coalition, I just really want to welcome everybody to this webinar. You know, when you think about our mission at NatGLC, it's really about providing, you know, this voluntary ecologically and economically sound management of all of our grazing lands for their adaptive use and multiple benefits to the environment and society. And really, this is really through kind of three key components, right? It's science-based technical assistance, research, and education. And this webinar today is going to actually reach all three of those, right? This is a science-based tool, the decision support tool that really helps us as producers, you know, be better tomorrow than we are today, especially with our ever-changing climate of drastic you know, events of droughts and floods. And so really appreciate, you know, the other component is really about partnerships and collaborations. And that's what NatGLC is all about. You know, we look at us as an organization, it's an organization of 11 organizations. And, you know, time flies by when you're having fun, Michael, and we're a month and a half away to celebrate our 30th year anniversary, right? We started in June of 1991 in Bozeman, Montana. And we kind of fast forward today, and we still have that strong relationship with USDA, with NRCS and ARS, our climate hubs and our universities. And that's who we get to hear today about this. So again, just want to thank everyone, and thanks Dr. Margo of helping put this together, and looking forward to some great interactions and learning.
Yeah, thank you, Chad, and yeah, thank you for for hosting for NatGLC hosting this event, and we look forward to future events like this. So, our next guest is Karen Woodridge, NRCS State Conservationist in Kansas. However, she is currently on a detailed assignment as Acting Ecological Sciences Division Director.
Thanks, Michael, so much for having me on here this morning. And Chad, thanks for those nice comments too. I just wanted to touch on the climate hubs just briefly as an introductory kind of comments. And I'm sure Dr. Peck will probably talk quite a bit more about what we do and what everyone does at the USDA climate hubs. But it's such a unique collaboration across the Department of Agriculture, and building off of what Chad said, right? Bringing together the research with the technical assistance piece of things with, you know, practicality and the ability for us to use that research, use that data, and really make it farmer relevant. And that's what I think the goal is, and the strength is of putting these climate hubs together. You know, their primary mission is to look at developing and delivering science-based region-specific information using those technologies like we're going to hear about today on the Grasscast tool. So not only making them farmer relevant across the country, but relevant for our grazers, for our ranchers, for our landowners, for our farmers, specifically in the regions that they are growing in and working in. So I think it's really exciting to see some of the fruits of the labor of those groups. You know, and those climate hubs are led by a diverse group of folks across various agencies, NRCS being one of them, but ARS and the Forest Service really kind of leading the charge at each one of those 10 locations. So we're just excited from an NRCS perspective to be a part of that whole effort. From science and technology, we have one person sitting over there right now out of Lincoln, Nebraska in one of the hubs. And from our programs section, we've got some other folks that you'll hear from today. So again, it's an exciting time to be part of this collaborative effort and really bringing the best people forward and their ideas to be able to work with NatGLC. So just the other day, Michael and I were on a call, and NatGLC came up as being this amazing organization that really is that grassroots organization that really looks at providing guidance, direction, assistance, support from a peer-to-peer kind of perspective, and bringing in that science in the background to this big group of folks across the nation. And just a big shout out to NatGLC for your ability to stick with it for this long. I didn't realize, Chad, that it's coming up on 30 years, so that's pretty amazing. To see a group stay and build momentum like you guys have over the past 30 years. So kudos to you. And we are just so fortunate to be a small part of that. And we're really appreciative for the partnership and events and happenings that we can be a part of with you. So today on this GrassCast tool, I'm excited to learn a little more about it as well. But this really great opportunity for it to be, number one, I like that it's an optional resource for folks, right? It's not something that is being required of folks to do. It's not going to make, you know, your bottom line better just by using this tool, but boy, is it a great resource for folks to be able to rely on, to use in conjunction with their decision-making processes, and looking at how you can combine your grassland production with historical weather patterns and the way that's all been changing. You know, it's just another great resource that we're able to bring forth and again, be farmer relevant. So I appreciate the time again this morning, Michael, and I will stay on as long as I can today, and looking forward to seeing the presentation. So thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Karen, and thank you for joining us this afternoon. Okay, next I will introduce our two GrassCast presenters. First, Dr. Dannele Peck is Director of the USDA Northern Plains Climate Hub, having joined ARS in November 2016. Previously, she was an Associate Professor of Ag Economics at the University of Wyoming, where she conducted research, extension, and teaching for 10 years. Her area of expertise is decision-making under risk and uncertainty, applied to a variety of agricultural issues such as drought preparedness and response in cropping systems, increasing farm and ranch resilience to weather variability and changing climate, and disease prevention and management in livestock and wildlife. Raised on a dairy farm in upstate New York, Danelle is a first-generation college graduate and proud alumna of the McNair Scholars Program. Our second presenter will be Julie Elliott. She's an NRCS liaison to the Northern Plains Climate Hub for 2021. Julie is passionate about conserving natural resources through sustainable agricultural practices and delivering educational opportunities. She's particularly interested in helping landowners develop the knowledge, skills, tools, and confidence to strengthen their range management strategies before, during, and after drought. Over her nearly 30-year career, she has organized 84 workshops that have reached over 4,000 people. She also served as general co-chair for the 2020 SRM International Meeting, the Society for Range Management. Raised on a small ranch in central eastern Colorado, Julie too is a first-generation college graduate. Julie and her husband Tom have one daughter who lives in Kentucky and works as an airplane mechanic for a charter business jet company. Thank you, Danelle and Julie, for joining us. Danelle, Dr. Peck, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Michael. Let me get my screen shared here for you. Give me just a second. All right, and we'll go to full screen next. Okay, can you confirm, Michael, that looks okay?
That looks okay.
Great. Well, thank you everyone for the opportunity to be here today. Again, my name is Danelle. I'm a member of the GrassCast team, which is why we're here today, but also director of the Northern Plains Climate Hub. And I really appreciated Chad and the opening remarks from Karen about the importance of partnership. GrassCast is an excellent example of the value of partnerships across diverse people, diverse disciplines, diverse locations. So you can see here on my opening slide that GrassCast is a result of a partnership across multiple USDA agencies, especially ARS and NRCS, also the Office of the Chief Economist, and then multiple university partners and extension partners listed here. So I really appreciate the partnership. It wouldn't be possible without them, and GrassCast wouldn't be as helpful without them. So before I explain GrassCast, again, I just wanted to say a couple of quick words more about the climate hubs. I really appreciate Karen's overview of us. She did a great job. Here's a map showing our 10 regional hub locations. I'm located here in the Northern Plains Hub. Behind me on my screen, kind of in the background, you can see where I live in Laramie, Wyoming. It is cattle country and rangeland country. So GrassCast and rangelands are near and dear to my heart. I know some of you might be located in the Southern Plains region, so you have a Southern Plains Climate Hub. And maybe some of you are from the Southwest today and go check out the Southwest Climate Hub. They each have a lot of wonderful resources to help kind of rangeland management in a very kind of weather whiplash world. What is a climate hub? What do we really do on a day-to-day basis? Here's my team. Again, we're a small team. We're technically based out of Fort Collins, Colorado, but we're located all over our Northern Plains region. And here's how we really work on a day-to-day basis. We keep and maintain relationships with all of our friends out in the field, the folks who are lucky enough to have their boots on the ground and who are seeing weather and climate-related issues unfolding right in front of them. And so when they encounter an extreme weather challenge or a climate change related challenge, we don't expect them to be experts in weather and climate. And so we hope that when they have a challenge or they have an idea, that they'll reach out to us and let us know. And on the other side, the rest of our time is spent cultivating relationships with all of these different partners in the world of agriculture and weather and climate. And we speak the language of both worlds. That's our job, is to kind of be that intermediary. And so we have great connections with our USDA agencies and service centers in the field, great connections with NOAA and the National Weather Service and some of your state climate offices. So if we don't have the immediate answer or resources that you need for your issue, hopefully we have a partner who can, and we'll reach out to them, see what resources they have or what tools they might be able to help develop in collaboration with you, and bring that back to you in the field. My favorite part, though, as a Climate Hub director, is building relationships directly between you and the people that have the expertise or the knowledge of the tools or resources to address whatever challenge or idea you have in the field. So that's what we do on a day-to-day basis as a Climate Hub. NRCS has played a pivotal role in our Climate Hub network. This slide is just showing an example of all the projects that NRCS and our hubs together have accomplished. More importantly are the people that NRCS brings to the table. And NRCS is the reason that I'm lucky enough to be co-presenting with Julie Elliott today, a longtime NRCS employee. And so NRCS has supported 16 Climate Hub liaisons over the last few years. And many of those liaisons, like Julie, have helped to develop these, again, very farm and ranch oriented tools that we're bringing to you and hopefully help address your needs in the field. Today, we're here to talk about grass cast, so let's get to it. All spring, I don't know about you guys, but all spring, I wait and I watch out my window, which is right there in my home office, thanks to COVID. Wait and we watch and look out the window and wonder, are we gonna have enough grass this summer to support our livestock? And in the past, we've relied mostly on seasonal precipitation outlooks like this one, kind of trying to peek out into the future a few months ahead and see how much precipitation we might get in the growing season. But what does this really mean for rangelands and for ranchers? There's obviously a connection between precipitation and how well the grass grows, but it turns out it's actually a pretty complicated relationship. And I don't think it was fair for us to ask you guys to try and translate how much rainfall we're expecting would translate into how much grass would grow. So we decided we ought to do that translation for you, or at least take a next step in doing that. So that's where the idea of GrassCast came from. What is it though? Well, it's a map-based tool, kind of like what you're seeing here. And you find your location of interest on the map and it has a color. And here's where this color comes from and what it means. For your location, based on the weather that we've observed up to the date the map is made, let's say April 15th, plus what we think might happen with the weather over the upcoming growing season. So based on those two pieces of information, we're expecting grassland productivity in your area, so pounds per acre, to be some percent higher or lower than your area's long-term average. So that's the kind of in a nutshell what GrassCast is trying to tell us. Now, we know that the weather is hard to predict, especially in the Great Plains region in the summertime. Forecasts aren't always correct. So instead of trying to just guess one weather scenario and give you one GrassCast map, you all asked us to do 3 scenarios instead. What if rainfall in May in the upcoming growing season over the rest of the growing season? What if it's above normal? What would the GrassCast maps look like in that scenario? But what if you're wrong? What if precipitation is just near normal? What do the maps look like then? How different are they? And finally, worst case scenario, what if the spigot turns off for the rest of the growing season? We've been below normal precip. What would the GrassCast map look like in that scenario? And so GrassCast was born. And nobody panic. I know it's 3 maps. It looks pretty overwhelming. There's a lot of information, but let me walk you through a concrete example to show you that how to interpret it. So first, you choose a location of interest to you. Here I've chosen Comanche County in Kansas because the colors looked interesting to me. So find your location on each of the maps and circle it. And then look at the color in each of the maps. I'm going to start over here on the left. This is the above normal precipitation for the rest of the growing season scenario. This map was made on April 14th. So it observed all of the weather from past years and through the winter and up to April 14th. And then we're going to fill in the rest of the growing season with an above normal precipitation scenario. So for this location in Kansas, under that circumstance, if we have above normal precipitation, then the GrassCast model is suggesting that we expect your area here in southern Kansas to be this medium blue color, which says 15 to 30% more pounds per acre than what is typical for your location. But what if we're wrong? What if instead we only get near normal amounts of precip? That's the middle map. Well, then the GrassCast model is suggesting this area should expect 5 to 15% more pounds per acre than normal. And finally, again, if the spigot turns off kind of below normal precip for the rest of the growing season, this area is yellow. indicating our model expects 5 to 15% less pounds per acre than normal for your area. So that's just one example. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Julie Elliott. She's going to walk us through a second example. I think this example from Kansas is nice in the sense that it's showing a location that the broad takeaway is they're probably in pretty good shape. You know, kind of 2 out of the 3 maps are suggesting above normal grassland production. But if it is a bad growing, you know, if the precip turns off and we have a tough year, then at least we have some sense for how bad it might get. And in this case, you know, yellow is not great, but it's definitely not the worst category. So be prepared for the possibility of some below average production, but our models are suggesting that it shouldn't get too bad out there. Let me turn it over to Julie for a different scenario.
Thanks, Nell. So next now we're going to move north to Billings County, North Dakota. We picked this site because it's pretty interesting. The grass production predictions are pretty interesting for the below normal and near normal precipitation. So again, don't panic. Let me walk you through it. So on the left-hand side, again, above normal precipitation, it's a turquoise color. The little key tells us turquoise means 5 to 15% more pounds per acre than the area's 38-year average. That's what our model is suggesting. The middle one, again, is near normal. Near normal, that box inside, the color inside the box is turned orange. The key tells us orange means that if precipitation is near normal, GrassCast expects 15 to 30% less pounds per acre than the area's 38-year average. And lastly, worst case scenario, the color turns red in below normal precipitation. Red means that GrassCast predicts there'll be 30% less pounds per acre or worse. Well, if I have a place in Billings County, North Dakota, I might be wondering, well, am I maybe a little better than this? Or what exactly does this mean? 15 to 30, that's a pretty broad range. Well, as a matter of fact, you can get more precise. You can go to GrassCast, the website, grasscast.unl.edu, and there's a zoomable tab. Click that zoomable tab, and the 3 maps will pop up. You see there's a little magnifying glass there on the left-hand side. You can use the magnifying glass to type in a town or a county. Just be forewarned, if you use a county, it'll automatically take you to that geographical center of the county. And if you're in a big county like Cherry County, Nebraska, that may not be anywhere close to you. You might want to use the plus and minus signs to zoom in and out to get your location refined. And then use your mouse button to click on the spot that you think represents the spot place where you are. So in this case, again, on the left-hand side, above normal precipitation, for this grid cell, GrassCast says that to expect 8% more pounds per acre than the long-term average. The middle one is near normal precipitation, 17% less pounds per acre than the area's long-term average. And then the worst case scenario, again on the right, the precipitation is below normal. GrassCast is expecting 40% less pounds per acre than the area's long-term average. Well, gee, that's not very cheery thought. Which map's more likely? Maybe we can get a little help here. Well, for that, we go to the NOAA Climate Prediction Center. This is a map similar to the one that Danelle showed toward the beginning of her presentation. You can get a 30-day or a 90-day precipitation outlook. The thing is, we're so late in April, 30 days not terribly helpful. So we're going to pick the 90-day precipitation outlook. If you click the interactive option, you can use your mouse to click on the location you think is closest to where you are. A little pin will show up, and then the pie chart on the right-hand side will pop up and tell you what NOAA's confidence is in the 3 scenarios of above normal, below normal, or near normal precipitation. Well, in this case, it's not terribly helpful. You can see it's leaning just so slightly towards below normal. But man, I wouldn't take any of these odds to the gambling table. So let's go back to our GrassCast map and see if we can get a little more help here. All right, the way these maps are made is the 38 years is stacked together with the highest rainfall at the top and the lowest rainfall at the bottom. You take the top 13 years, because we're splitting it into thirds, the top 13 years make the model for the above normal precipitation. The bottom 13 years create the model for the below normal precipitation. And those intermediate years make the near normal model for the precipitation. So let's think about it. Given what's happened in 2020, what happened over the winter, what's happened so far this year, what's the likelihood that in Billings County, North Dakota, that the precipitation will actually come into those top 13 wettest years of the last 38? In contrast, what's the likelihood that Billings County, North Dakota will fall into the near normal or the bottom 13 years of the last 38 years? So you think of it of the last 16 years, the lowest 16 years of the last 38 years. What's the likelihood that it's going to, or 26 years, sorry, would fall into one of those years? That kind of shifts the odds a little bit more, doesn't it? Instead of being a third, third, and third, it's really a third and 2/3, with 2/3 of the weight laying in that near normal or below normal precipitation, both of which predict a pretty dire reduction in total production compared to the long-term average. But I don't live in Billings County, North Dakota. In fact, I've never set foot in Billings County, North Dakota, so I don't know what it's like there. You've got to take your own information and your own knowledge and look at other sources of information to determine how much weight you want to put in this GrassCast map. Don't put all your eggs in our GrassCast map. We want you to look at it, put some eggs in your GrassCast basket, but don't put all of them there. I'm sure all of you have looked at the Drought Monitor. Who on the Great Plains hasn't been in a drought in the last 20 years? The Drought Monitor uses information about precipitation, temperature, and evaporation, and other climatic factors to create these maps. They give you short-term and long-term drought impacts and degree of drought. So it tells you where we are, at least on the date that the map was made. Here's another tool that you may not be so familiar with, VegDry, Vegetation Drought Response Index. This is pretty neat because it takes climatic data and translates it into vegetative condition. So it's not a forecast, it's a reflective of greenness or dryness based on climatic data and the grass growth curve. What should be happening in that area based on what's happened so far? So it's a statement of what's happening in real time right now. What's the quality of the forage in front of you? So you take these two information, combine that with GrassCast and lots of other tools. But all these tools do not replace your monitoring and your observation. What's happened in your area, in your place in the last year, in the last month, in the last week? Where are you today? How's your rotation working out? Are you having to move sooner than you thought? Or are you able to stay the length of time you expected and still leave the stubble height that you want to protect your ground for the coming year? And how are your trigger dates and conditions compared to where you are right now? Range management is a combination of both science and art. What we've been talking about is the science, all these models, and there's lots and lots of really neat range tools out there. It's all the science. The art of it is what you do with it. So the interpretation and decision making, that's the art. And range management is both science and art. And there's no standard prescription for what you should do when Mother Nature throws an unprecedented event or condition at you, except that we do know that if you're looking at much less forage, somehow they've got to reduce on forage demand. So if you've got one, now is a good time to dust off that drought plan. Pull it out and take a look at it. Is it still relevant? Is it reflective of your situation? Has the land base changed? Has the livestock situation changed? How about your financial or family situation? Is it all still as it was written when you wrote the drought plan? The other thing the drought plan does is help you be accountable. This is what you decided, you and your team, what you were going to do, what the conditions were that were going to cause you to do something. So don't change it now in the heat of the moment. You made this plan when you were calm and things were good. Stick with the plan. If you don't have a drought plan, now is a perfect time to write one. It's still early enough that you can take some action and help reduce or mitigate the impacts of drought. Some of your options might be weaning early. Some of them might be moving some animals off site. Maybe you've got a cow that you wouldn't let a 2-year-old be in the pasture with. Maybe it's time for her to go down the road. Perhaps you have some that have fallen out of your calving season. Maybe it's time for them to find a new home. How about other options out there? Maybe there's some crop aftermath, or perhaps you can plant some crops or annual crops, or you know someone who's planting crops. Or maybe they just need to move off site for a while and they can come back when things get better. The National Drought Mitigation Center is a great resource to help you figuring out what are your options and what are maybe some things you can do to help manage drought. Next week, they're going to be launching a dashboard that has links to a whole bunch of science and some folks with the art down. The Mitigation Center also has drought plans from real ranchers. So maybe you can learn something from one of them. And of course, USDA is always here. Your local service center with farm service agencies and NRCS, the climate hubs and university extension. There's programs out there that come and go depending on the county and state you're in. So go in and check. Maybe there's something there that can help you. If there's no programs, there are at least people that you can talk to about your situation. And because they have an outside view and they have contact with a whole lot more people than you do, they may have some thoughts or ideas that you hadn't considered. And lastly, the farmers.gov website. It's a pretty new site and it's got everything USDA. So take a look there. There might be some help there for you too. Taking action in drought's not easy, but doing something is better than nothing or waiting until you're out of grass. For all the ways we want you to use GrassCast, we do not want you to misuse GrassCast. GrassCast is not an excuse to do the windshield monitoring, you know, driving down the road at 55 miles an hour, looking out the window, seeing how things look. That is not the way to do monitoring. You have to get out on the range. You've got to look and see what's out there. Here's a picture of what you might see when you're out there looking for calves, checking your salt and minerals, looking out the windshield, see what's out there, or as you're going 55 miles an hour down the road. What do you see? Well, green has an intoxicating effect on us in the summer, in the springtime. And what we see tall green grass. Man, everything's good. But when you get out there, you get out of your pickup, get off your four-wheeler, put your boots on the ground and the eyes on the ground. What do you see now? This bottom picture was taken in the middle of the picture on the top. You can see my pickup key there, just a little bit to the right, the center. A little different view, isn't it? GrassCast cannot see what plants you actually have. GrassCast does not know if the plants out there are desirable or undesirable. GrassCast does not know if it's all cheatgrass or if it's grasses that are perennial grasses. GrassCast does not know if you've got a whole bunch of weeds. GrassCast works in 6 mile by 6 mile grids, which is great, especially if you're in a county like Cherry County, Nebraska. It gets you down to, at a reasonable distance, but it's still 6 miles by 6 miles. And whatever that average was that was used to create that grid forecast may not be representative of your site. You may have had rain that they didn't have. You may not have had rain that they did have. GrassCast does not know what you've got for standing vegetation. It doesn't know if it all broke off and blew away and the tumbleweeds that went back and forth across your range over the winter time. It doesn't know how tall the grass is. Is it 6 inches? Is it 8 inches? GrassCast does not know what kind of litter cover you have on the ground. It certainly does not know how much of that precipitation that fell actually soaked into the ground or ran off or it evaporated into the air. And which one of those three happened is a total determiner of how much vegetation production you might expect this year. All that in mind, federal managers and absentee landowners should not be using GrassCast to determine how many animals can go out on the range. They should not be using GrassCast to say when animals can go on or when they have to come off of the range. And definitely GrassCast is not a range monitoring product. Lastly, GrassCast should not be used to be documenting forage grazing loss. Grazing loss, total production is divided into 3 camps. Grazing, total production is divided into 3 sets. The first bucket is what needs to be left behind to maintain grass production, to maintain the grass plant itself. That's the biggest bucket, right? Then you have the bucket for losses, wildlife, grasshoppers, trampling, urination or defecation, being laid on. Then there's the bucket that's allocated to the cow. And that bucket is not the same as total production. So total production, which is what GrassCast is predicting, is not talking about grazable production. The two are not the same. Grazable is less. To learn more about GrassCast, come to our website. And if you can't remember the URL or the address, just type GrassCast into your favorite web browser. It'll come right up. There's great frequently asked questions across the top. On the left-hand side, there's a whole menu of options. The introductory video is a great little 5 or 6 minute video. It introduces you to GrassCast a little more than what Danelle and I have done today. There's also a tutorial on how to read the maps, and then historical productivity. What is GrassCast using to consider for production for your area? GrassCast is built using National Weather Service co-op weather stations. Well, we're hoping very soon to be going to Cocaross, a community collaborative rain, hail, and snow study. Cocaross was born in Colorado, actually after the early 1990s flood in Fort Collins. But look, even in Colorado, look at all the gaps, all the places where there are not any reports. Yuma County on the right-hand side, third county down, the second question mark on the top there. I know for a fact there are over 60 numbers that have been assigned for observers. But look, on April 17th, only 3 bothered to report what happened there. The climatologists, the weather scientists, and GrassCast, when we get to use Cocaross, those blanks don't help us any. We don't know if it rained or it didn't rain. And those zero zip nadas are hugely important. We all have seen times when we looked at the weather radar and look, it's green or even orange over the top of us, and we didn't get a drop. We need to know that you didn't get a drop. Cocaross likes you to use a rain gauge pictured there on the left, but you don't have to. You can use your own rain gauge. Just put in the comments section that you used your own rain gauge and what kind of rain gauge it was. Cocaross doesn't cost anything to enter. You just need to let them know you'd like to join, and they'll be happy to assign you a number and get you located. If you were a Cocaross observer, but you've kind of dropped off, just let them know you'd like to reactivate your account so they don't assign another number to the county. They'll be happy to help you get reconnected. The other thing Cocaross does is have this condition monitoring report form. It's a pretty short form, pretty easy to fill out. They like it to be submitted on a regular basis, so it draws a picture of what's going on out there. It has simple radio buttons and a few boxes where you can add more information about what's been going on. It's helpful to those who look at the data, both in National Weather Service and weather scientists and modelers to see what's been going on. But if Cocaross doesn't really grab you, maybe you'd like to look at seymour, Condition Monitoring Observer Reports. seymour was created by the National Drought Mitigation Center. The information there does go into a permanent public record. They have current and archived maps. It's a great opportunity, again, to report how drought's affecting you. The nice thing about seymour is it's a little more detailed. So they asked a few more questions like, how much experience do you have there? And how often have you seen it like this before? That tells a person a whole lot. We don't have to we don't have to see anything else to know if somebody's been there 20 more years and they've never seen it like this before. It's pretty extreme what's happening there. seymour does require ArcGIS 123, but it's easy to download to your mobile or to your tablet or to your computer when you ask for the drought form to fill out. The other thing seymour has that Cocaross doesn't have is the ability to upload pictures. And who doesn't wish they had pictures from 5 or 10 years ago when they first started managing a place or when you changed your management? The important thing about pictures is to make sure you're taking them at the same time and try to get the same foreground and background so you have a direct comparison. A lot of us, if we looked at that top picture, we see that water in there, we go, hey, they got water, they're in pretty good shape. But if that bottom picture is normal or average, we could all agree that they're in pretty dire straits. So another option for you to put in information. So that's about what we have to present to you about GrassCast. There is a map for the Southwest, but it uses a little different modeling and it makes it a little complex trying to combine the two into one webinar. So we decided to focus just on the Great Plains. But if you're in the Southwest, why go to the site, you can pull up the Southwest maps. You can do the zooming just like on the Great Plains. And GrassCast is relatively new. It was first started in 2017, so we're all still learning. So if you've got comments or questions, if you think the maps look great, if you think we're crazy, please let us know. Then we can dig into the data and find out what's causing these unusual blips. GrassCast maps will be updated every 2 weeks. As we move into May, they'll become more and more accurate as the opportunity for that important precipitation passes by, becomes the rearview mirror instead of guessing out the windshield. those maps really start to drill down and become quite accurate. So I encourage you to keep looking at the maps as we go through the growing season, particularly towards the end of May and the first part of June. And we'll open it now for any questions. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you, Julie and Danelle. I certainly appreciate that. It was very informative. We do have plenty of time for questions. There is a chat. You can type in your questions in the chat, or if you like to raise your hand, if you look at the bottom control bar of your screen, there is a reactions button. If you click on that reactions, you can see the raise hand feature, and you could be called upon. And then, of course, just unmute yourself. And so, are there any questions or comments out there? Okay, so there's a question. Has GrassCast model been developed for the Pacific Northwest? And I had a kind of a question related to that. Other climate hubs, are they producing, similar type of models or tools?
Yeah, I'll take this one, Michael. So GrassCast was born originally in the Northern Plains, where I'm located, back in 2017. And then a few years later, we were able to extend it to the Southern Plains, as you saw today. And then just last year, we expanded it to the southwestern states of New Mexico and Arizona. Every time we go to do an expansion to a new region, we need some really important pieces of data. And the two most important are kind of the long-term weather, long-term daily weather records for a location. But the harder part is long-term rangeland clippings data. So we need a location that's been collecting, taking their clippings data every year for ideally 30 years or longer. And that's hard. They're out there, but they're pretty far and few between. And so usually that's one of our major challenges in trying to expand to a new region like the Pacific Northwest. We've gotten requests from California to go there. First and foremost, we've got to have that long-term rangelands clippings data set. And so right now, the GrassCast team is kind of scouring the rest of the Western US, looking for those long-term clippings data sets. And where we can find them, we'll put that location on our list as a future expansion. As for the other hubs, Michael, we work with them. Again, GrassCast was kind of born in the Northern Plains hub. We're the quote unquote experts on this, or our other hubs kind of look to us to say, hey, our ranchers are interested in this product. Would it be possible to expand here? The last thing I'll say about that is just GrassCast relies, it kind of has four puzzle pieces, and we've already talked about two of them, the weather data and the long-term clippings data. Another piece is that we do use some satellite remotely sensed data, and those satellites struggle in any area that has trees. And so unfortunately, we can't take GrassCast to kind of forested grazing systems. So depending on what part of the Pacific Northwest you're in, I spent 4 years in Oregon, so I know the landscape is really varied there. Unfortunately, we can't go into forested grazing areas.
Okay, thank you. And thank you for that answer, Danelle. Richard, I believe you had your, Richard Bowling, you had your hand raised.
Yes, I did, but her response to that question kind of answered mine. I'm in the southeast region. I'm actually a grazing specialist in eastern Kentucky, and was just wondering if there was any plans in the future to expand out to other regions. But it's all going back to those clippings data and having that base to build it on. Thank you. Very good model.
Thank you, Richard. And I would definitely say we have had requests to expand GrassCast to the east. Again, if people know of long-term rangeland data sets, we would love to have them so that we can, the next step would be to go in and look at the relationships between the weather and how well the grass grows. Those relationships are different by region, as you all know. And so we would need to kind of redo some of our analyses that underlie the GrassCast model to make sure we get those unique kind of eastern relationships correct.
Excellent. We have another question. Do you incorporate NRI data, National Resources Inventory?
Yeah, this is an interesting one. The NRI data, we do have it and we do use it, but we use it in a slightly different way. As you probably know, that NRI data doesn't always stay in the same location year after year after year. You know, they stay at a site for a little while and then they'll move to another site for a few years. So we're not able to use it directly to build the GrassCast model, but how we do use it is to help kind of check, is the model working, to help validate the model. So we'll produce a GrassCast map and then use the NRI database and data sets to check and say like, okay, you know, in 1997, GrassCast would have said that this much grass should have grown at that location. Let's go look at the NRI data for 1997 and see how we did at this spot. So yes, it's super helpful in the process.
Okay, thank you. We have a question in the chat. I just wanted to confirm that you said GrassCast should not be used to determine forage loss. For example, when we are trying to determine if there are grazing losses in our county, that could provide disaster programs through FSA.
Yeah,
Julie,
John,
I'm gonna let you take this one.
yeah, John, I'm glad you asked that question because that's actually why I made the point, because I was aware that at least Colorado was trying to use GrassCast as a way of determining forage loss, and then that was causing them to argue with me with my estimate of loss because GrassCast set a different number. And you're right, because GrassCast is talking about total production. You could use GrassCast as a help with that, but you've got to use a translation between total production and grazing loss, because total production is not all allocated to the cow. At least 50% of it needs to be allocated back to the plant for plant health. And then part of that, depending on what area you're in and what the philosophy kind of is of your local managers, but what we use here in Colorado is 25% is allocated for losses, grasshoppers laying on, being defecated on, being blown apart in the wind, other losses like that. So really of the total production, we're really only allocating 25 to 30% of that to the cow. So if you're looking at a GrassCast final map like last year, and it said 30% or 25%, really what it's saying is the cow's portion was lost. So yeah, you need to be careful how you use GrassCast. If you're going to use GrassCast as part of forage loss, there's got to have that, you've got to have that interpretation. And if you really do want to use it, you need to be working with your NRCS range specialist or extension range specialist to make that translation. Don't just take it at face value.
And I'll just add to that, Julie, that we have been in conversation with FSA in a few of our Western states about this question, and we're still trying to work out how to do what Julie just described, so that in the future GrassCast can help inform those county loss estimates, but that they're correctly interpreted. And I love Julie's example from last year that GrassCast may have been indicating a 25 to 30% loss of total production. But from a rancher's perspective, they may have seen like, gosh, there was nothing left for my cattle. It was 100% loss of the grazable grass. So thank you for that question and the excellent explanation, Julie.
Yes, thank you. In the text, in the chat, has the GrassCast model been validated? Have predictions been compared to actual conditions on the ground?
Yeah, yes, in kind of several different steps. And I'll explain a few of those here quickly. but I want to say right up front, we still need help from folks in the field to let us know, to be our eyes on the ground, as Julie said before. GrassCast is a computer model. It's not out on the ground like you all are. We're using the best precipitation data we can find, but that precipitation data is not going to be from your ranch. In fact, right now we're relying on our official NOAA co-op stations, as Julie said. I don't know if everyone knows, where is your nearest NOAA co-op station data? Is that 5 miles away? Is that 200 miles away? So we need your help, your eyes on the ground, to let us know where you think GrassCast is accurate and where you think GrassCast is off. And often if it's off, it may be because we don't have great precipitation data for your area. That's one common reason, but we want to know where that is. Like, please let us know, because we don't know your area. So we do still need help out on the ground, kind of validating, so that in the future we can make it better for your area. Now, that said, there is validation along the way. Again, we are using actual clippings data from the field to help inform, to help build the model. We're using the NRI data to help validate it. And then we're also using a separate, there are lots of satellites floating around in space out there these days. We use one type of satellite to help kind of build the GrassCast model, but then there's a separate satellite that's measuring production in a different way. And we save that information, we set it off to the side, don't use it in building the model. Instead, we use it at the end to ask, how does our model prediction compare to this other independent satellite estimate of production? So that's how we're doing it. But again, we need help from the field. So send us feedback, email Julie and I, and let us know if it's off somewhere.
Will do. Another question, does GrassCast use temperature predictions as well? We've been experiencing some cool April and May temps here in the Sandhills the last several years. And hello to my friend Julie, that's from Ryan Sexton.
Yeah, so the GrassCast model does take temperatures into consideration. The very first step in the modeling process, when I say it takes in daily weather information, we focus mostly on precip, but in fact, it's also taking in daily minimum temperature and daily maximum temperature from each day. And recording that from past years, again, all the way up to the date that the maps were made. And that temperature data is kind of being combined with the precipitation data to help us understand evapotranspiration. How much moisture do the plants want to move through their tissues versus how much water is available to allow them to do that. And the temperatures, as you know, right, gets hot, those plants are going to want to try and transpire more. And if the moisture is not there to fulfill it, they're not going to feel so good. That grass isn't going to grow so well. So yes, temperatures are in there.
Excellent. There was also a question, can you speak a little more about the National Drought Mitigation Center, what it provides to ranchers?
Yeah, I'll take that one, Danelle. Yeah, it's a great site. If you haven't heard of the National Drought Mitigation Center, they are focused on all aspects of drought, but they really do have a big focus on ranches. So I actually went to the website so I could kind of quote to you directly what they have. So if you go to the National Drought Mitigation Center, and how I found it is I just searched for National Drought Mitigation Center, and then there's a tab called Drought Planning. And under that tab, there's all kinds of resources about decisions to make for ranch. So learning about drought planning, drought impacts, there's some information by state, and then plans. And they all different kinds of plans from several different ranches all over the West and at different scales, just to help you get an idea of how other folks have managed. If you scroll down to the bottom, they have specific managing drought risk on the ranch, a drought management database. So other information that can help you planning for drought, mitigating drought, figuring out how to handle drought. Again, I think one of the most valuable things they have there is the drought management plans for other ranchers, telling you what it is they look for, what the rules are that they use for determining when it's time to make a move, what the rules are that they use to not back up over themselves when making a move. It's just reassuring to as a rancher, when you're thinking about making a big move, to know that this is where I need to go. I need to pull the trigger. And if things turn out better than I thought, then they're better than I thought. But at least I'm not caught behind the 8 ball, because there's nothing worse than coming up on August 15th and being out of grass, having the cattle market crash, the hay market through the sky, and there's no place to put your cows. So taking those actions earlier rather than later. Often people say, man, I don't want to do it too soon, because then what if things get better? Well, if things get better, well, then they're better. Then you'll be better off next year. But if they get worse, it's going to hurt you a whole lot more than moving too soon. And they are going to launch a dashboard next week, and then I'll put everything on one page. It'll have all the links right there. So it'll be a little easier, because I do find the website just a little bit difficult to navigate through, because they are dealing with cities and watersheds and other things, not just ranchers. But this dashboard is aimed right at ranchers. So when that launches next week, it'll be right on their front page, because they have an announcement right now saying coming soon. So you'll be able to get right on it. And then that'll link you to all these tools, the science side of it. It'll also link you to the art side of it from the rancher's perspective. I hope that answers your question. And if I didn't, please do feel free to email me, and we could chat some more about it.
And Julie, the only thing I would add to that awesome description is just that another resource that will be at that range management dashboard are extension bulletins from all over the West, from lots of different states. And so there's excellent extension bulletins about blue-green algae, and you know, if your water sources are getting low, do you have to worry about blue-green algae and the health of your cattle? Again, as Julie said, examples from other states of, you know, what to do before drought, during drought, recovering from drought. So even if a resource isn't from your exact state, I think there's such an amazing collection of fact sheets and extension resources. Surely there's, you know, information out there from one of those states to help answer your question or get you thinking about a management option.
Okay, excellent. Well, that covered just about all the questions on the chat. And I see you've put your email up there. Thank you, Danelle. And thank you, you know, as we're faced with climate challenges, you know, there is that need for mitigation, adaptation, and learning. And thanks to all the climate hubs for responding to those needs. So, you know, with that, I just want to thank Dannele, Dr. Peck, Julie, Chad, Karen, Nat GLC, and all the participants that joined the webinar today. Thank you for your time. The email on the chat, you'll see email addresses, contact information, and the GrassCast webinar or GrassCast website. So, and this webinar is recorded, so we will there'll be a chance for others to share it with others that may have missed it. So thank you very much, and with that, I will conclude the webinar. Thank you for your time. Have a good day, and happy Earth Day, everyone.